But it's not just that, right? We also deal with the business. And so how do you scale? How do you brand and market? How do you go through and do your due diligence in your operations? And the goal is just to help build the collective body of knowledge and then being a better leader in your business.
Welcome. You're listening to the Apartment Investing Show. This is where you'll learn how to start or scale your apartment investing career. Your host, Adam Adams, has educated thousands of investors on the topics he shares on this show. Adam and his guests will show you how to create residual income by investing in apartment communities. Now, here's your host, Adam AAA Adams.
I'm really thrilled and excited to have my friend Jerome on the podcast. Today, let me tell you a bit about Jerome first off. He's an apartment investor. He lives in Greensboro, and North Carolina, and he also invests in Greensboro, North Carolina as well. Today, Jerome has 90 doors, which are all JVs, not syndications. And today, we're going to talk about three different things. And I'm passionate about two of them. The JVs, you're going to have to sell me on it, Jerome. All right, so the first one is diversity within the multifamily space. The second one that we're going to talk about is why do joint ventures over syndication. So you're really going to have to come with your A game there. And then the third one is the power of your network. We're going to talk a little bit about you don't really have to learn everything from scratch. There are other ways to grow your network. Your network is your net worth. So, Jerome, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will hop into the questions, my friend.
Awesome, Adam. So grateful to be with you today. I'm the son of a soldier and a stay-at-home mom, believe it or not. As a kid, I wanted to be a garbage man. You know, I was sitting in the front yard and my mom looked at me and told me that that wasn't a big enough dream. And so she said, maybe you could own a company that has a garbage truck, but you can't be a trash man. But the thing that was important about that was I liked the lifestyle. So my dad would get up and go to work before 6, come back after 6. That was called a Carolina half day where I grew up. And so the garbage man, he was home by 3. And like when his kids got home, they were outside playing. And I was kind of jealous of that piece of it, right? And I was like, okay, well, I guess it's kind of mutually exclusive. You can either have lifestyle or you can have money. And, you know, that kind of shifted for me when I realized that you can decouple your time from money. And that is this beautiful thing that we call multifamily investing, where you buy a business, you can force the value by increasing the income. And through that, you can create generational wealth for you and your family. And so, you know, I went through college, got an engineering degree, went through corporate America, realized I was on the wrong ladder. Big hurrah. I built a $20 million division for a Fortune 550 company. Employee number 2. Had $0 in revenue, end of the year, 20 million, about 175 employees, $6 million in profit. The reward for that was laying everybody, well, half that workforce off. And it was the first time I had to do it. It was, 2015 or 16, 2016, into 2015. And I just promised myself I would never do it again. Fast forward to Thanksgiving, I had to do it again. And I decided to be a corporate America dropout at that point and started trying to do multifamily. Went to 10 base, got turned away, spent some time fixing and flipping until I could grow my network to find people with experience. And then from there, I got my first loan and then I started doing my own deals.
Nice. So what year was that again? Where you said you got your first loan and started doing your own deals?
2017. It took
2017. Awesome. And okay, so we've got 3 things on the agenda today. Diversity in multifamily, and then we're going to be talking about why joint ventures, and then we're going to be talking about the power of your network. And so I think the listener is in for a treat, but let's start with this problem that I think we're both seeing, and you take it away. Diversity within the multifamily space.
Yeah, so I always look in the mirror, right? And I was bebopping along. I got a deal done. I wasn't really telling anybody about it. I had a really small group of friends who were interested and willing to do deals with me. And so we were just humming along. And I started thinking about all the podcasts that I've been listening to and the conferences that I was attending. and the videos I was watching on YouTube, and I was like, I don't really see any diversity. But coming from corporate America, it wasn't that big of a deal for me, just being in construction and engineering and project management. I was used to there being a lack of diversity. But then I started thinking about it, and I remember a conversation I had with one of my mentors. He was the only African-American executive at the company that I was working for. And I was like, man, you are the shining light. You inspire so many people. There's so many people who look up to you. You prove that we can do it too. And then I started thinking about how I wasn't sharing my story, my journey, or even giving people an alternative approach. And that was when I got really passionate about sharing the story and becoming more visible. If you look for me between 2017 and 2019, May of 2019, you won't find a picture of me. You won't really see me anywhere on the internet because I didn't feel like there was a need for that. But the fact of the matter is, doing podcasts like yours and a few other guys, I've had people reach out and say, you've made this real for me because before I saw you or heard your story, I didn't think I could do it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. So I felt that way with my conferences as well. I was hosting all these events, and frankly, it's really easy to go and find, an old white man. It's really easy to find that person to come and be your presenter. And then it's a little bit more difficult to find women and people of color to be able to be on the stage because they're not as they don't have a podcast like you do. And so it's been always easier to find just this non-diverse crowd. And I think that it's important that, for instance, with women, that we try to have our stage, almost half with women, because I feel like there might be a lot of women that come to the event and they're looking at the stage and they're saying, everybody else is a man. So how do I know if I could do this? Or how do I see my inspiration? So what you were just sharing, means a lot to me. So I'm glad that you're doing your part to really bring out that diversity within this multifamily space. You're hosting a podcast. You're putting more diverse people in front of different crowds on your podcast. I think that's really important, and I see that you're going to really make a good change in the world, so that it's not just like one small subsect of America thinking that they can do multifamily investing. So it's really awesome. Love it. All right. The second thing, which I don't know if we're going to be in a fight over or not, but I think it's really interesting. I do syndication. So a syndication, for the listener, is where I bring together a whole bunch of passive investors, and those passive investors become the money for buying the property. Okay. And my team usually becomes the operators. So we're going to find the deal. We're going to close on the deal. We're going to raise the money. We're going to manage the deal. We're going to sell the deal. So all of that work kind of comes onto my team. And then the passive investors kind of just get to sit back and let it all happen for them. And so you do it a little bit differently. So why don't you tell us what's different between the syndication and the and JVs?
Yeah, so I think you did a great job of articulating the way it works. I tell the story a little bit different, right? And so you got your ticket, you're getting ready to get on the airplane because COVID's over and you don't have to wear your mask anymore. You get scanned in by the lady at the ticket counter. Then you walk down the runway, you get greeted by the stewards or stewardess. You wave at the pilots and the co-pilots, and you go sit in your seat. And you pay for your ticket to get on the plane. That's what a syndication is. For me, I live close to an Army base in Fayetteville, North Carolina as a kid. So the other thing I wanted to do was be a fighter pilot, right? And so in a fighter jet, you got just the pilot, and everybody's got an active role. They're all engaged in the day-to-day operations. And that is what I wanted, right? I wanted what I realized trying to get into my first deal, right? Told you about the 10 banks that turned me away. They said you didn't have any experience. And the only way that you get experience is, one, being active in the deal, and two, signing the loan. That is what the bank is looking for when you want to go do your own deals. And so for me, to go along with this thread of changing kind of the face of wealth and increasing diversity in multifamily investing, it's one thing to write a check and put your money in as an investor. It's another thing to be an operator and be able to go do your own deals. And so my goal is to help people who want to get into the space, because it's really difficult to get into the space, to do a deal. And syndications usually do really large assets, right? You pool all the money. The joint ventures will do the smaller ones. And I kind of think about it similar to maybe not a Fortune 500, but let's call it a Fortune 1000 companies of syndication. And then the small business owners are the joint ventures. And, there's a whole lot more joint ventures and small businesses in America than there are Fortune 1000s or Fortune 500s. And so I want people to learn how to run their small business. And then if they scale it and grow into a big one, go do that. But I want logical steps. I think we've been taught too much microwave and not enough crock pot. I want people to know that there's actually steps. And, if you're going from W-2, like if we go to the cash flow quadrant, you're self-employed, or you start with being an employee, then you're self-employed, then you're a business owner and you're an investor. People want to go from self-employed to an investor, but there's two other steps that happen along the way that I think would be really beneficial. And the one that's probably most important is being a business owner. If you're a limited partner, you're an investor, you're not a business owner. I want people to be business owners so that they generate that wealth.
Okay. Excellent. So what you're saying, and I love this part that you mentioned, instead of microwaves, it's crock pots. So everybody else is like, how do you go from 0 to 1,000 doors in 1 year? And that food doesn't always taste better. That food doesn't always taste as good as, being able to go from 0 to 20 in a year. And having it just so savory, and all the flavors are kind of combined in there, and it's really you take your time and you perform a masterpiece. I really like the way that you say that. So on joint ventures, what are the other benefits? Like, do you make more money with the JV than you do with a syndication, and or other benefits that you might see within joint venturing?
Yeah, so this is only the strategy for the folks that know they want to be active operators. One of the things that I've struggled with is when people are told, hey, put your money in as an LP and that'll get you experience, when the reality is they actually want to be operators. So they really want to be a GP, but they feel like being an LP will get them to being a GP. And I'll go back to my upbringing, right? Like, there were no wealthy people coming over to Enlisted Men's house for dinner, right? I didn't have any business owners in my dad's network that I was hanging out with or learning from them. So, the conversation is very different depending on the network that you have. And so what I want people to do is I want them, if they want to be operators, to figure out the most direct path to being an operator. Instead of putting your $25,000, $50,000 as an LP into a deal, I want you to keep that money as pursuit capital to go do your own deal, and then figure out how to partner with people in a joint venture structure in order to get the deal done. And it's very similar to what we did on the first deal, right? We took down a 23 unit, and, we put 5 people together on that deal: property manager, general contractor, project management, the broker, and then the guy that had the balance sheet. And we did a really heavy value add. And I mean, do you make more money? I think on a percentage basis that you can, because you're able to move the needle a little more aggressively. For instance, on that property, we took it down to 0 occupancy, but we took rents from $695 to $1,195 when we opened the doors back up. And I don't know that you are going to be able to do that on a 200-unit property or 150-unit property, just from the standpoint of debt service is really taxing if you're doing that.
That's super interesting. Yeah, that's something that I never really thought of or considered. The time that it takes to turn a really large building is much bigger than the time that it's going to take to reposition a smaller amount of units. For instance, when some people are doing fix and flip just on single family houses, a lot of them might be able to do all of the work in 2 to 3 months, and it's listed 3 months later or 6 months later. So then we look at these 200 units that my team does, and we'll close one, and then all of a sudden it might take us 2 to 3 years to try to turn a significant amount of that over 2 to 3 years, because you can only do a few per year. And so what you're saying, and that you've done, is you've went into the middle and you found a way to take these medium-sized apartments. What would you say are these 5 to 10 units, 10 to 20, 20 to 30? What's kind of the range of your joint venture before I kind of go on?
We like 20 to 75. I think
okay.
That's the sweet spot. It's the middle space. People call them tweeners because it's not ready for on-site management. I think it's big enough, right? You want to build a moat in your business, right? And so it's too big for the residential guys and it's too small for the guys like you, right? And so we're playing in that space and competing with attorneys and doctors who have full-time jobs, but you got a guy like me who's full-time who can go show up on the site and do a tour while the other people are thinking about it.
Awesome. So you might take a building that's 20 units and you might reposition it like a fix and flip. You'll buy it, you'll fix a broken apartment business, and then you'll put in, instead of 600 in rent, it's like 1,100 in rent, more than doubling the value of the property. And then what do you do next? Do you sell it or do you refinance it? What's the next step?
The goal is to always be able to refinance all of the initial investment out in the first 4 years. And then we can do one or two things: keep it forever, or sell it to somebody who wants it a whole lot more than we do.
Good stuff. All right, my next question. So we talked about diversity within the multifamily space. We talked about the joint ventures versus syndication, and I think you had a pretty strong argument. And then the third thing we talked about, we're about to talk about, is the power of your network. And so there was a lesson that you learned that you don't have to do everything just from scratch. So how do we solve that problem? How do we streamline our success? Microwave for our success. How do we do that? What's the best way to do this? It sounds like it's building your network. And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's connecting with people at a deeper level, right? There's all the social media in the world is only going to go so far. Eventually, you've got to lock arms with a group of people and say, we're going to do this thing together. And so for me, it's masterminds. And what I've learned through the mastermind that we set up for dads and multifamily, the powwow at the mountaintop, is that, getting the right people in the room can allow you to make a phone call and solve a problem where you could have spent months trying to figure it out on your own. There's just wisdom to it. Adam, I was fortunate enough to be looking at a 200-unit deal that I was thinking potentially could do in a joint venture with one group. And I called my man Pankaj and I said, hey, here's what's going on. What do you think I should do? And, his family's got about 4,000 doors. And he said, well, do this, this, and this. And the reason why I felt comfortable calling him was because the year before, him and his dad JV'd a 800-unit deal. And he's now to the point where he's got occupancy up in like 95% and just long on a deal that was deeply distressed when they purchased it. And so, being able to make that call, get that feedback, and know that they have a vested interest in you is a game changer for just about anybody in the space. I pride myself on being an expert and being knowledgeable, but knowing when you get, in a situation that you aren't used to being in, that you can call somebody and they can help you navigate that, I think is great, is amazing. We call it GPS, right? I was talking to one of my other friends, and it's like, you can sit in traffic, or you can use your GPS to navigate the traffic and get to your destination on time. And I think that's probably one of the greatest metaphors to illustrate the point.
Love it. And while we've been talking, Jerome, we have actually a few comments coming in live, and so I'll mention a few of them here. I'll just go through. Jerome Anna Marie has said a few things. The first thing she just said, she was talking about the diversity. She says, "Thank you so much for the encouragement." When we were talking about the JVs, she said, "Love this." And then she also came out with a question: what class are you focusing on? And she's talking like, is this B? Is it C class? Is it D class? What are you focusing on for these medium-sized apartments?
Yeah, so we want to serve the workforce, right? We do workforce housing, so it's a C and a B more often than not. And the goal is to take care of teachers, police officers, firefighters, the people that make the world go round. We want them to have great, suitable housing. They're not going to be able to go buy live in the new stuff. It's always going to be priced out. But these folks are the ones making a huge impact in our world, and we want them to have a great place to live.
Good stuff. Thank you. Corey says, he tags you and says, 90 Doors JV, let's go. Rick tagged a friend, Jana, and Brian Briscoe says, get some tuna in the boat first. What does that mean there, Brian?
Yeah, so
Jerome knows, right?
Yeah. It's my deal, right? So every once in a while I'll go deep sea fishing, and the whole deal is getting some tuna in the boat. But a lot of people want to go. We talked about it a little bit earlier. They want to go do 100-unit deal, or spend $10 million on their first apartment project. And I'm telling people, no, spend $500,000 to $1.5 million, get that track record built up, so that when it comes time for you to go take down Moby Dick, you've actually caught some fish before. I think it's really strange to say that you're going to go catch a whale when you haven't caught.
Makes sense. I like it. All right. Now, Jerome, we are going to be wrapping up to the final five here in a moment. But first, let me go through a couple things with you here. I want the listener to know that you have the Multifamily Missteps podcast. Tell them what's it about. What is it about?
It's war stories from operators who are actually running the business, right? I think there are a ton of podcasts out there that give you HGTV. Everything works every time. They don't ever make any mistakes. And I'm bringing on the most transparent and vulnerable operators onto the show and getting us to tell them their key learnings from the mistakes that they actually made, not something they heard about. And, whether it's having to write a check to pay a mortgage because you don't want to go back and ask for a capital call, not timing the displacement of residents in your unit so that you can jack up the foundation, which makes you miss your first year financials, modeling something wrong, just whatever the issues are, so that people can go into this thing eyes wide open. I think we romanticize it in order to make us sell. And the reality of the situation is you're going to run a business. You're going to get hit in the mouth. You need to know about the things that can hit you so that you can be prepared. Because there's no reason for you to make the same mistake I made if we truly agree that, there is no competition in the multifamily space.
I think you and I talked about this in person about a year ago. I think I remember you telling me something to the effect of, all these other podcasters are coming out and making it all warm and fuzzy and making it all fluffy and covering up all the bad things that can happen. And you were like, I'm tired of it. I don't want to just paint this picture and have people getting into it and then making mistakes. And so you talked to me about, you wanted to have this podcast where, or maybe you already had it back then, where you were going to literally get into the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts, the bad things that possibly could happen. So you called it multifamily missteps to be able to give what you feel is the real value. You know what I like about you is it kind of goes back to our very first thing, diversity within multifamily. The reason, and it goes through everything that we've talked about, but here's what I've noticed. You see a need and you fulfill it. Everything that you've said today is like, hey man, there's nothing like this. I need to make this. And so you grab it by the horns. I might have said something else if we weren't live on Facebook. You grab it by the horns and you make it happen. You start the podcast where it is exactly what you think the world needs. And now you're helping a lot of people because they're not going to be making the same mistakes as the people on the show. And there's another thing that you've done. To fulfill a need, and that's your mastermind group. Could you tell us a little bit about the mastermind group, why you founded it, who it's for, etc.?
Yeah, so the mastermind group is for dads in multifamily, and we want to build dads. I don't, women do a lot to support each other, but men just kind of suffer silently. And, I'll never forget one of my buddies texted me. He was like, "Hey, I'm dropping my daughter off at daycare." And she screams her and cries her eyes out every time I drop her off. "Do you have any suggestions or strategies on how this can be less painful?" I wrote him back after we had that exchange a week later. He was like, "Yeah, she waves at me now and I cry instead," right? Because they figured out how to make the transition. And, it's that kind of stuff that we're not going to go read a book. We don't know what to do, but if there's somebody a little bit further along on the journey, then we can ask the question. But it's not just that, right? We also deal with the business. And so how do you scale? How do you brand and market? How do you go through and do your due diligence in your operations? And the goal is just to help build the collective body of knowledge, but with the intense focus on dads, being a better dad, being a better partner, and then being a better leader in your business.
Awesome stuff. Really, really appreciate you going into that. And I do think that it's important. I do think it's important because I've been I'm in a couple of mastermind groups. Love mastermind groups. It really helps you kind of grow who you are as a person. I run a mastermind group. But these mastermind groups are very kind of focused on just business. And I remember a time that I got vulnerable. I jumped out and I said something. I think your screen's. Oh no, never mind. I thought you were frozen for a second, but it might have been just me. So getting back into it, I was in this mastermind. We were in where was it? West Palm Beach, and I was really working to build my company. I was really working to build my business, and within multifamily syndication, just like you say in your podcast, you get hit a lot, right? You get hit a lot. There's a lot of things happening. And at the time, I was really working to scale our company's brand in front of other people, and get the podcast out. And we were working on a couple of deals that we had closed that were having some challenges. And I remember trying to think and consider, what am I going to talk about today in the mastermind? That's what I was thinking. I was like, what am I going to talk about? I could talk about this or this or this or this, because there's a lot of challenges. And when I got up in front of the room, I came to tears. And all I said was, I just want to spend time with my kids. I am so focused on success in business and growing and going to the next level that I think I'm leaving my kids behind. And so, with tears in my eyes, there was a bunch of people around. It wasn't necessarily the right place for that, because it was more about business. But what was interesting is the support that I did get after just being completely myself, transparent, not trying to pretend like I was the best dad in the whole world. And I just let them know, this is what I'm challenged on. I want to spend more time. I want to give them more time, but I don't know how. And it was interesting because a lot of people in that room had the same challenge. A lot of people in that room, they were already very successful. Like, you have some people in your mastermind, one of them has about 4,000 doors, one of them has 3,000 or 5,000, one of them has about 6,000 doors that are in your group. And that was the same in this group. There was a few people that had net worths of tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they came over to me and they're like, I went through the same thing, Adam. Here's how to fix it. And it made a huge difference. And so you've created this mastermind group called is it called Dads for Multifamily, or what's the actual title of it?
Oh, the powwow at the mountaintop.
That's right, the powwow at the mountaintop. I love it. And the listener can find it at powwow at themountaintop.com. And so, yes, there are two W's next to each other. There are two T's next to each other, but you don't even have to worry. I'll put it in the show notes, so you can just go and find that in the show notes. Click it if you'd like to talk to Jerome about being part of the powwow at the mountaintop. All right. We are going to break into the final five, but first, a quick word from our sponsor.
This episode was made possible by Adam's Inner Circle program. This exclusive group is a collection of industry leaders, influencers, passive investors, and strong operators. This is the type of community you want to join, where we come together multiple times each month, virtually and in person. We support each other, invest with each other, and even interview each other on our podcasts, and invite each other to speak at our live events. If you're ready to take your real estate investing to the next level, this is the group for you. Fill out an application today by following the link in the show notes.
Jerome Myers, what is a book that you recommend?
Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi.
What did you learn from that book, Jerome?
You have to be willing to give up those $10 tasks in order to work on the $100 task. Like you can't do everything. And I'm a person who feels like, no, I can do it. Don't worry about it. I can do it. No, you need to give those up so that you can actually do the things that make sense.
I love it. Thank you. All right. The next question that I have is, what is the biggest win of the week? What is your biggest win of this week?
My biggest win of the week. Oh, so this comes back to being a dad, right? So I got the kids this marble roller coaster thing, and we started building it. And they were getting frustrated because it kept falling, and just doing the little shifts and making the little adjustments without doing it for them, but giving them the guidance, and then seeing the success when they actually figured it out and finished it was phenomenal for me. And, they look and they celebrate and high five and all that stuff. It's just amazing. I love being a dad.
Thank you, Jerome. What is a challenge that you recently overcame in your multifamily business?
Ooh-wee. Which one? I think for me, it's about going to scale and getting in front of the right audiences. I think you spend a lot of time doing things that aren't value added, and you never actually know which one's going to hit. But being more strategic and intentional about your networking and relationship building, I think makes a huge difference. And for me, making that shift, and I blew up. I basically doubled my LinkedIn following since March.
That's really awesome. Good job. And you can help people with that if they're in your mastermind, right?
Absolutely. That's part of it.
Boom. Just wanted to plug that. Okay. Number 4 question. What is the one thing that you would offer to a brand new multifamily person? Like, what is the best advice that you could give to somebody who has not yet closed that first deal? They absolutely want to. They may have even been studying, but they haven't been able to achieve the first one. So what advice do you have for that person?
Yeah, so there's 4 problems that every investor is trying to solve: knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital. And it's in that order. You need knowledge in order to determine whether or not you have a lead or a deal. You need a deal in order to attract an experienced partner, because you don't really have anything to offer them if you don't have a deal. And then you need a deal or experience to attract capital. A lot of people say if you've got a deal, you'll get capital. Smart capital is only coming if there's an experienced operator involved in the mix, because they don't want you to learn with their money. And so knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital.
Very interesting. I think that's a really good way to sum it up. And I need to find out how I can steal that from you and share that with others. That is cool. Knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital, in that order. All right. Great answer for number 4, Jerome. Number 5. How about somebody who's listening, who's already closed 1 or 2 or 3 deals? They've already been they might even have 1,400 doors. Okay. What is the advice that you can give to somebody who's already doing it that can help them scale and take it to the next level?
That's simple. You got to have the right network, right? Because it turns into who you know in addition to what you know. But if you're not connected to the right groups, or you're trying to do it all yourself, you're going to end up in a pond, and you're not going to have the right tools in order to navigate that pond. So you've got to connect with other guys and gals that are doing it at a higher level in order to grow to that next level. Think about lifting weights. If you lift weights with people who aren't as strong as you, you're not going to get much stronger. But if you go in there and you jump in with some guys who are moving some big weight, or even some ladies moving big weight, then you're going to up your game. And so up your game every time you get a chance.
Love it. What are a couple of ways that we're able to grow our networks? How have you grown your network over the last 6 months?
Yeah, I think it's really podcasts, being on podcasts and being active on LinkedIn have been the two ways where my network has grown the most. And then from that, forging a deeper relationship through masterminds and one-on-one coaching and mentoring.
Love, love, love it. Jerome, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I will let you know that we've got a few more comments coming in on the live while we're happening. Aaron King says, great info. Thank you both. Jonathan Shank says, great episode. And Earl Allison says, your network is your net worth. And I couldn't agree with them more. This has been a great episode. I really appreciate you coming in, talking about how we can get more diversity within the multifamily space, talking a little bit about what was the second thing. Oh, yeah, that's right. I wanted to forget it because you're trying to tell me that JV is better than syndication. And then the third thing, talking a little bit about, why did I forget that one? There wasn't even a reason to forget that one. Yeah, what was the third thing, my friend?
Networking.
Networking, that's right. Awesome. And you've given us a lot of good information. I encourage the listener to go and find your show and listen and check out what happens in multifamily, the real deal, not just the rosy picture that the rest of us want to paint. Go to Jerome's show. Those links are going to be in the show notes, so you can go and find that in the show notes. If you are on the Facebook Live, Jerome is going to put all of his links into the comments of this Facebook Live, so you can go there as well, or go and find us out. Earl says JV is his favorite too. Jerome, it's hard to say Jerome and Jerome. It's hard, difficult. She says, great truth spoken today. Leica says, you two are my faves. Earl says, woot, woot, thanks, dudes. And I'm trying to see if I missed any. I don't think I did. Jerome, I'm going to let you go. But until next time,
this is awesome.
Think outside the box. As a reminder, any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are for accredited investors only. And if you're interested in working with me and my team, then go to realbluespruce.com and click Get on the List. It's that simple. Just click Get on the List to start passively investing. This has been an episode of the Apartment Investing Show with me, Adam Adams. All rights are reserved. And if you haven't done so already, then make sure that you absolutely smash that subscribe button. And I'll see you on the next episode.